The West is on the line. It's week 7 of college football. Iowa travels up to Madison for potentially a windy and soggy game at Camp Randall. We'll talk Hawkeyes and Badgers. I'll give you my score prediction, my pick for the game in just a minute. But first, we look at my first pick for the week of college football, week 7 of college football. We start out in the ACC, Syracuse and Florida State. Syracuse 17.5-point underdogs. They lost big last week. I think they lose big again this week. Florida State covers the number, the 17.5. The Seminoles continue their awesome season with a win over the Orange. IU, that's Indiana taking on Michigan. And boy, look at what Michigan did to Minnesota last week. Minnesota now has lost to Northwestern and got pounded by 40 to Michigan. Their season is appearing to go down into the dumps. We'll see if PJ Fleck can keep those guys together. But as it relates to the Hoosiers, Tom Allen just got rid of his offensive coordinator. Will they see immediate changes? I don't think they will. I think Michigan wins this game big. Now, 33.5 is a massive number. Michigan favored by 33.5. Again, they beat Minnesota by like 40 last week. I've got Indiana against that number. It's just too big for me to take Michigan against the spread, but Michigan will win this game at home. Ohio State at Purdue. Mark Rogers gave me an interesting stat the other day. If you look up Ohio State's record against Big Ten teams on the road, the team they've struggled with the most on the road in recent years has been Purdue. Of course, they lost there to Rondale Moore and company back in 2018. This is a different Purdue team without Jeff Brom. I don't think they're as dangerous through the air. They didn't run the ball particularly well against Iowa, and Ohio State's defense has looked a lot better this year than they did maybe 3-4 years ago. I think Ohio State wins this game. I think they cover the number. They're only 19.5-point favorites on the road. I say only. I'm used to Ohio State being the 30 to 40-point favorites against Big Ten teams. I like Ohio State to win. I like them to cover. They win big in West Lafayette. Arkansas taking on Alabama. I am not bought into the Razorbacks right now. I think they've looked poor. Of course, they had a close loss to BYU, but they've just looked up and down, and for the most part, down. I don't think the SEC is as good as maybe they have been in the past. Frankly, they might be this third best conference in the country. They're probably closer to the second because the West and the Big Ten is so bad right now. I think the Pac-12 has an argument to be the number one conference in the country based on performance thus far. But back to Arkansas, Bama. I think Bama wins. They are 19.5-point favorites at home in Tuscaloosa. I think Bama wins big and they cover. Texas A&M on the road taking on the Volunteers of Tennessee. Tennessee, 3.5-point favorites. A&M has been much more impressive in their wins. I think A&M wins. I think they win big. I think they cover the number on the road. Florida taking on South Carolina. This was a tricky one. Don't have a lot of confidence in this one. The game, of course, is in South Carolina. I like Florida to go on the road and win a close one. It's South Carolina by 2.5, so I think Florida will cover narrowly, but again, not a lot of confidence in this one. I've got Florida straight up Florida against the 2.5. Oregon taking on Washington. The Huskies, boy, both these teams look really good, have looked really good so far this year. They're undefeated, top of the Pac-12 along with USC. I think Washington wins because they're at home. Again, low number. They're 3-point favorites. Basically, what the spread is telling me is this would be an even spread on a neutral field. I like the Huskies to win. I think they cover narrowly at home. Should be a lot of points scored. Now, I say that and watch these two teams play a 15-10 game, but these are arguably the two best offenses in the country. I think Washington wins, and I'm going to take Washington against the 3. UCLA taking on Oregon State. Game on the road in Corvallis for the Bruins. I think UCLA goes on the road and beats Oregon State. This is kind of my upset pick of the week. I think UCLA wins on the road. They are 3.5-point underdogs in Corvallis. Auburn taking on LSU. LSU scores a lot of points as well, but they struggle defensively. Kind of like the opposite of Iowa right now. If you look at the numbers, I like LSU to win at home. I think they cover the number because of the amount of points they can put up. They cover the 11.5 and take care of the Tigers. Miami taking on North Carolina. Miami coming off that pathetic loss. I was watching that Georgia Tech game live. One of the biggest coaching blunders I've ever seen from that coaching staff, and a fireable offense to not take a knee late in that game against Georgia Tech. They end up fumbling the football. Georgia Tech has 3 plays for a touchdown, and they upset the Canes. Incredible finish to that one. Will Miami bounce back? Great question. They could seriously have a hangover from that game, or they could be angry, come out and play well. I'll side with that side of this, but I do think there's a chance that they don't respond to Mario Cristobal and that staff. I think Miami wins on the road. They cover the number. They're 3.5-point underdogs taking on the Tar Heels. USC and Notre Dame. If the best game in the Pac-12 is not Oregon-Washington, it's certainly USC's trip to Notre Dame. This should be a fun one. Notre Dame favored by 2.5, again at home, so you'd basically call it an even spread on a neutral field. I like USC to go on the road and win. I was not impressed with what the Irish did last week against Louisville. I will take USC on the road and against the number. And that brings us to Iowa and Wisconsin. Another Fox game for the Hawkeyes, 3 p.m. Central Time for the kickoff. I gave you my keys earlier in the week. I talked about those. I think Iowa needs to get creative. Are they capable of that? I mean, I think they're capable of it. Have they proven they're willing to do that, especially in this series? No, they have not. They need to win the turnover battle, win the special teams battle. Both those stat lines have proven large to be big in this series specifically. Even though it's a different coaching staff at Wisconsin, I still think those stats are crucial and are essential and going to be intriguing to follow. And then finally, who's going to score first? Whoever gets out in front. I think Iowa's going to struggle running the ball. Wisconsin may struggle as well, but both these teams want to establish the ground game. So whoever gets on the board first is going to have that advantage. And so we'll see what the weather does. Who's going to get the ball first? Perhaps you defer if the wind is a factor, and it looks like it's going to be a factor. So that'll be interesting to see as well. Wisconsin at last check, 10-point favorites, have been hovering around 9.5, 10. I might surprise some folks on this, and I've said this for a long time, folks. I'm an Iowa guy at heart. I've been wearing red a lot of this week. That is a total coincidence. I can promise you that. I'm not a closet Badger fan. I can assure you of that. But I might surprise some people on this, and this is proof that I'm not just an Iowa homer. I try not to be an Iowa homer. I've got Wisconsin up in Madison. I've got Wisconsin against the number. I'll take Wisconsin 20, Iowa 7. Wisconsin 20, Iowa 7. The Hawkeyes lose on the road against the Badgers. I think the Badgers cover, and it's going to be really hard for Iowa to recover. Remember, I picked Iowa to win this division in spite of losing to Wisconsin, but I also thought Wisconsin would drop a game early, maybe to a Purdue or to a Rutgers. They have not. If Iowa loses this game, I think they're out of the division race. I have a hard time seeing Wisconsin, barring some big collapse and losses to teams that they should absolutely beat. I have a hard time seeing Iowa recovering. With 2 losses in the Big Ten, Wisconsin would be undefeated in the conference and pretty easy schedule moving forward, the exception being Ohio State coming to town. So again, 20-7, the Badgers over the Hawkeyes. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not rooting for Wisconsin this game. I want to see a win. I'll be doing live post-game coverage after the game myself and you. We're talking Iowa, Wisconsin, taking calls, taking chats, taking comments, and then Sunday, an extra post-game show with Coach Patterson Sunday night. Time to be determined, to be announced. So stick it right here, though, for Iowa, Wisconsin, Saturday on Fox, and then post-game coverage right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We will talk to you then. Go Hawks.